So what sets Netflix apart is that first they defined the category, which also meant that they're first movers. And more importantly, they have scale. That's what really matters in this industry is this scale. You need to have scale in order to be profitable because there's large upfront costs in order to set up a streaming platform. You have to have a huge content library, and you also have the infrastructure back end to be able to serve your consumers at any time that they want. So put those two things together. That's why Netflix is ahead of everyone because they have a bigger user base and they're able to leverage that user base to reduce the net unit costs and therefore get a higher margin.
But then Uday, I think if you look at it, it's not that it's a unique inherent property of Netflix. The profitability of this business equals number of subscribers times the price, the average revenue per user or ARPU, minus content cost. Yep. It's a very simple equation. And the beauty of this is that every incremental dollar that you generate in revenue falls right to your bottom line. And there are only two major variables you have perfect control over, which is the content cost and the price you offer to your customers. By optimizing those two variables, you can really have a very positive outcome like Netflix did, or a pretty bad outcome like the majority of the other companies have been so far, Disney included. The content cost is something that it's not completely independent. It drives the your pricing power, and it eventually affects your user base. But it's important to manage it so that you don't get into content wars. Like I know wars is part of the title for this panel, but this is what they shouldn't do. They shouldn't really get there.
That's the important part, right? The content cost spend. And Igor made a great point. There is, you don't spend like a drunken sailor, because at a certain point there is no net return on new content. The content marginal return starts coming down, and that's what Netflix has understood much earlier than everyone else. And if you see over the last 2 years, that's what everyone has gotten to. Instead of saying we're going to, as Disney said, we're going to have a new hit every week, they've decreased that cadence down. So why? Because you don't need more than a certain amount of content to keep people coming back. And that's what we think is going to happen in the longer run. But the one thing that still remains important is scale. Not everyone can get to scale. And scale now also means global scale. It's not just regional scale, it's got to be global scales. Without global scale, your profitability will be much lower. The profit pool is going to stay between a much smaller number of players who have global scale. And then you'll have this big tail whose profit will be much lower. It's not going to be a democratized profit pool. It's going to be the winners take a lot. Then there's a little bit for the rest. And there might be much more of a tail where there is no profit at all, but they're being run for different strategic reasons.